Cheaper money, new rules. How China is rewriting Africa's debt game. Last week, Kenya converted roughly $5 billion of its Chinese railway debt from US dollar to yuan to cut interest costs. Officials say the switch saved Kenya about $250 million, a headline move that also advances Beijing's currency ambitions. This week, Zambia reached a long-awaited debt restructuring deal with its Chinese creditors. This and other similar stories reveal something bigger. China's role in Africa isn't shrinking, it's changing. Hi, I'm Samia Mohammed, and this is Analytica Today. For years, Western headlines warned of a Chinese debt trap. But in the past few years, that outcry has gone quiet, not because the story is over, but because it's evolving. China hasn't pulled back from Africa. It has recalibrated, shifting from aggressive lending to strategic refinancing, restructuring, and currency diplomacy. From Nairobi to Lusaka, from Johannesburg to Abuja, Beijing's influence is deepening, not just in money, but in method. So today we ask, is China's growing power in Africa a new kind of dependency or a new opportunity? Let's start with Zambia. After years of negotiations, Lusaka finally struck a restructuring agreement with its Chinese creditors, including the Exim Bank and China Development Bank. The deal eases the payment schedules, lower near-term pressures, and gives Zambia space to refocus on growth. Zambia was the first African nation to default during the pandemic. Since then, it's been the test case for how Beijing handles debt distress. This agreement matters because it shows a more flexible China, one willing to work within global frameworks while still shaping the rules from behind the scenes. For Zambia, it's a lifeline. For China, it's a proof that influence can be preserved through cooperation, not coercion. But the deal with Kenya is less about restructuring and more about currency power. By converting its dollar-dominated railway loans into yuan, Kenya effectively joined a quiet campaign to de-dollarize African finance. The government says it will save over $200 million a year in interest. But the move also places Kenya inside Beijing's monetary orbit, deepening trade links and cementing China's role in East Africa's economy. Every time an African nation repays loans or buys goods in yuan, the renminbi grows stronger and the dollar loses a bit more weight. It's not just about cheaper money, it's about reshaping the language of finance and who gets to write the next chapter. Across Africa, the pattern repeats. South Africa has finalized its first yuan-denominated credit line with Chinese banks, small in scale but symbolically huge. Nigeria is negotiating a $2 billion Chinese loan to rebuild its collapsing power grid. And in nearly every sub-Saharan economy, Chinese funds are behind new power lines, ports, railways, and fiber networks. In 2025 alone, Chinese financing touched more than $30 billion in African projects. At the same time, research shows developing nations now pay more to China in debt service than they borrow in loans, meaning Beijing is consolidating influence, not overextending it. Alongside the money comes soft power. Confucius institutes, media bureaus, scholarships, and training programs all cultivating generation that sees China not as a donor but as a partner. This is how China multiplies influence, quietly, systematically, through economics, culture, and communication. So what does it all mean? China is solving real problems. It builds power plants, roads, and railways, often faster than Western financiers can finish feasibly studies. For governments under fiscal strain, that speed is irresistible. But no power comes without strings. Chinese loans may not demand democratic reforms, but they shape decisions through currency ties, technology dependence, and political leverage. Still, compared to the West era of conditional loans and imposed autonomy, Beijing's model feels different. It's transactional, not ideological. It sells solutions, not speeches. And for many African states, that's a welcome alternative, if they can manage it wisely. So is China the new colonizer or just the newest competitor? Or maybe it's a bit of both. If African nations use Chinese capital to build capacity, power, production, connectivity, they gain agency. But if they use it to plug deficits or fund short-term politics, they trade one dependency for another. What do you think? Is China reshaping Africa's future or rewriting the same old story just in a different language? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.